Hi, my name is Trish, and in this video, I will be talking about the books that disappointed me in 2021. Note the title because this isn't necessarily a list about books that I disliked in 2021. Some of these books are books that I actually liked but felt were lacking in one way or another. However, some of the books in this list are books that I genuinely disliked, which leads me to my other disclaimer. Everything that I say here are my own opinions. These reviews are very subjective based on my own taste and my own reading experiences, so don't take them as the final word on anything, and especially don't take them as an attack on the author or people who like these books or towards anyone in general. These are just my opinions on the books that I've read, and that's it. It's nothing deeper than that. So the first book in this list is Unravel the Dust by Elizabeth Lim, and I gave this book 3 out of 5 stars. This is a sequel, clearly less stellar than its predecessor. This book sits on the fine line between me liking it and me not being satisfied with it. And me not being satisfied with it wouldn't be so frustrating if it weren't for the fact that the book had so much potential to be better. My main problem with the book was that it felt very safe to me. It didn't feel like the book was leaning into the stakes that were very clearly present in the story, most especially Maya's descent into becoming a demon. Maya's struggle with becoming a demon is a darkness that looms over the entire book, but only in a very teasing kind of way. I never really felt the gravity or the danger in her situation because it's only ever hinted at through Maya's dreams and visions, but never in actuality. There are some scenes where Maya acts out as a result of her slowly becoming a demon, but there's a huge difference between dreaming of killing all your friends and family and lashing out at someone because you found them annoying. I felt that the book downplayed Maya's whole situation, which is why I didn't believe that there was any real risk for Maya or the other characters, because the things actually happening in reality were never as severe as the things going on inside Maya's head. Another problem for me was the great and obvious imbalance caused by the absence of Eden's character. Eden was a key player in the previous books, not only as a love interest but also as his own character, but in this book he was barely even there. Maya uses Eden as a reminder to keep fighting her demons, and that's exactly how Eden felt throughout the book. Just a reminder of his character. The next book in this list is Arsenic and Adobo by Mia P. Manansala, and I did not give this book a rating for personal reasons. Talking about Arsenic and Adobo makes me feel all shades of frustration and disappointment because this book was one of my most anticipated reads of 2021, and everyone and their mother hyped this book up. So this book is a cozy mystery with a Filipino-American protagonist and centers on Filipino food. Only personally, I didn't think it delivered well on any of these. The cozy mystery was boring, the main character was annoying, and the Filipino food felt very baity, to be honest. Until now, I cannot mention ube crinkles without absolutely getting triggered because of this one specific scene where the main character introduces this ube crinkle dish that she made and calls it a Filipino-American spin or twist to it, which makes no sense to me because one, ube crinkles and many flavored crinkles in general have been a thing in the Philippines for years. We have strawberry crinkles, pandan crinkles, we even have chocolate butternut crinkles. It's not a new thing. Second, was it the condensada? Was that what made it a Filipino-American twist to it? Because not to be the condensada gatekeeper here, but Julian Santos did not carry the condensada industry on her back for years. For the main character to say that using condensada on a dish was a Filipino-American twist to it, it doesn't make any sense. I don't really understand what the main character was trying to do here, and I think that's where my main problem with the main character stems from. I don't understand where she's coming from or what she's trying to do or convey. Their story is supposed to tackle the fact that they're creating new dishes that are a respectful nod to Filipino cuisine, but also have their own taste and creativity added to it. It's supposed to be this allegory about them finding the balance between connecting with their roots, but still being true to themselves and living their own lives. And yet, all the dishes mentioned in the book are either weak imitations or shadows of dishes that are already being done in the Philippines, but are painted as this new and creative and inventive dish that the main character made up. Like salabat with calamansi and spices. I can go to any food square here in Cebu right now and find at least one restaurant that does that. It's not a new thing. And what I really hated was the fact that this whole arc was inadvertently made into a Filipino-American protagonist versus their narrow-minded conservative Filipino relatives. Like, that is a trope that I am absolutely sick and tired of. Like, this can't be the only thing available for diaspora Filipino characters. Like, this whole situation about the main character using Filipino cuisine to connect with her roots but also be a way for her to find herself and be herself could have been a really nice thing to read about. It could have been a really nice character arc for her, but I honestly don't think that it was handled or executed well, and reading this book honestly made me frustrated and uncomfortable. And I'm not even bothering with the cozy mystery because, to be honest, there's nothing to be bothered about it. The next book in this list is Don't Tell a Soul by Kirsten Miller, and I gave this book 1 star. I actually didn't finish reading this book because I found the main character absolutely unbearable, which was a shame because I did like the book's chilling atmosphere and its more scarier elements. I also like how the book tried to tackle the topic of how women's narratives have been wrongly portrayed through sexist lens, and how even until now we still struggle to tell our stories on our own terms. Unfortunately, that was subverted by the fact that the main character does the exact same thing to everyone around her. I am not sure if this was the author's intention to maybe tackle the topic by challenging the main character, because if it wasn't, then big yikes. One specific scene that really pissed me off was when the main character was talking to another female character, and the main character told this character that they were a typical rich girl because of the way that they dressed. For context, this other female character's outfits were composed of fashionable coats, dark outfits, and she wore red lipstick. Basically how a large percentage of Western millennials dress. If you think it's ridiculous that the main character would judge and push the wrong narrative on another person just because they have style, that's because it is. It is absolutely ridiculous that they will do that.
You go to your closet and you select, I don't know, that lumpy blue sweater, for instance, because you're trying to tell the world that you take yourself too seriously to care about what you put on your back.
Like, what constitutes as a typical rich girl outfit? In that note, I am curious what she thinks constitutes as an upper middle class outfit. Or what comes across as a struggling working class outfit, because present. And the funny thing about this is, if there's an actual typical rich girl in the story, it's the main character. Because the main character was actually supposed to go to boarding school, but their mother, who is an event organizer for charities for rich people, was scared that her daughter's shady past might affect her standing with her rich clients. So the main character decided to run away to her rich uncle's mansion. You know, boarding school, rich relatives, mansions. These aren't assets that are readily available to the common demographic. Unless you're a typical rich girl. Anyway, she does this judgy thing to the gardener's son, and at that point I was just too pissed off to carry on with the book. So I don't even know if the main character's behavior or way of thinking was challenged or not. And to be honest, I'm not confident that it was, because what I absolutely disliked was how the book painted the main character as someone that we should support and sympathize with because of how other people judge her. But then we're supposed to turn a blind eye when she does the exact same thing to other people. Like, that's not how it flies, buddy. On a brighter note, she does this judgy thing with everyone else regardless of who they are. She actually does this to an actual typical rich boy. So it's good to know that her judgment knows no gender, race, or social class. Good for her, I guess. The next book in this list is House of Hollows by Crystal Sutherland, and I gave this book 3 stars. I really liked most of the book, but the last parts and the conclusion disappointed me so much that it practically erased all the good feelings that I had for the earlier parts of the book. This book could have had it all for me, and if it didn't go the way it did, it would have ended up in my favorite books of 2021 list. But it did go the way it did, and here we are. I am absolutely tired of the trope where the main character falls in love with their sibling or best friend's significant significant other, and these two end up because it's suddenly shown that the said sibling or best friend is actually a bad person all along. As if that's the only way to justify the main character and the significant other being together. Like, why not make it interesting? Like, why not make the other party just this decent or even just normal person, and that the significant other and the main character wanted to be together despite there being absolutely no problems between the significant other and the other party? Or what if the significant other stayed with the other party despite knowing their history and the things they've done? I think these options would have made for a more interesting story or character arcs to tackle, not only for the main character, but also for the significant other and the other party going forward. Once again, a romantic relationship being pushed in the story ruined the book for me. The next book in this list is The Project by Courtney Summers, and I gave this book 3 stars. I almost did not put this book in this list for the fact that Courtney Summers did their assignment for this book, and it shows. To get an idea of how well Courtney Summers researched and educated themselves about cults and their environment and how they operate, I suggest watching this YouTube video of a cult deprogrammer talking about these things, because everything that he discusses are things that Courtney Summers was able to portray so well in the book. Like, seeing the parallels side by side is so cool. However, this book is in this list because while it isn't a bad book, I did find it lacking in some very big ways. The project had a lot to live up to following the explosive success that was Sadie, and while the project is by no means a failure, it did lack the gripping atmosphere that Sadie had. And despite how well Courtney Summers was able to portray cults in the book, I felt like the approach and the storytelling was very detached. It felt more educational instead of personal. And like Unravel the Dust, I also wished that the project lead in more to the stakes and the consequences of the story. The later parts of the book were actually very rushed, and I didn't feel the gravity of the main character's eventual realization and rebellion against the cult. I also didn't feel the full impact of what they did afterwards and how it affected not only themselves, but everyone involved in the cult. Like, the conclusion was just too clean for a story that was so complicatedly layered. That being said, of all the books in this list, The Project is the one that I have the least gripe with, and it's actually still a very good and entertaining book in its own right, so I highly recommend it to anyone who's interested. And the last book in this list is A Taste of Sage by Yafa Santos, and I gave this book 1 star. This book was so bad that I could not remember anything about it. Like, my subconscious worked overtime to erase this book from my mind. Fortunately, I wrote a Goodreads review about it, and as Celine Dion once said, it's all coming back to me. Taste of Sage's biggest problem is its storytelling, because reading this book felt more like reading a person's itinerary of the day instead of an actual story. There was no plot structure, the pacing was torturously slow, and so many things were happening that really didn't add to the story or progress it, so there really wasn't any sense to it. It just made the story felt very draggy, like it would take years before we got to the next scene. On top of that, the characters are also very two-dimensional, so I gave up even trying to be interested in them. The most promising element of the book was the fact that the main character had powers, but even that wasn't executed to its full potential. Half of the time, I didn't even remember the main character had powers. Reading this book was very challenging for me because there was nothing in this book that could keep my attention. And that is it for the books that disappointed me in 2021. Let me know what your disappointing books were of last year. Feel free to chat in the comment section down below, and I will see you next time. Bye!